to Just-ok-wargamers, and this is going to be a intro video and how to play demo of Oathmark Battle of Lost Ages version 1. So what we have are two small 850 point armies. One is this Dwarven kingdom who have come to defend their mountain pass from this small human kingdom. So this is the starting skirmish of what might eventually go into a much larger war, which might span over several larger battles. So both armies 850 points, and what we're hoping to do is play through a full game of Oathmark, and so you'll be able to see some of the mechanics. So you'll be able to see the activation system, the shooting and how combat works, as well as how spell casting works. So being a rank and flank mass battle system, you'll see the units the armies are formed up into units. Normally cavalry of 5 to 10 models, and infantry are normally anywhere from 5 to 20 models max, which will make up a unit. So you can see here these armies are roughly 60 models a piece, and you get 850 point army, which is nice for a small game. But an average game might be 2,000 points, and larger battles, could be 3 times this size. But it does scale down all the way down to 500 points and all the way up to 3,000-4,000 points really well, because it's quite a fast-paced system. So what we'll start to do is look at the stats which are used in Oathmark for a unit and explain each one, and then we'll roll for initiative and we'll start the first turn. Okay. So looking at a stat block, what we have here is some Dwarven warriors. So you can see the stat block has the AM, F, SD, CD, H, PTS, special, and base. So it can seem a little bit daunting at first, but it is relatively straightforward. So the starting one, A, is activation. And the lower that number is, the more likely the unit is to activate when it comes to its turn to do something. So the dwarves have an activation of 4, which is a little bit above average. So they've got a really good chance of activating. M is movement. So that's how far it can move for an activation in inches. So in this case, the Dwarf Warriors has movement 4, okay, because they're wearing some heavy armor. So they're a little bit slow. F is their fighting capability. So 2 means they're going to add on 2 to their dice roll when they go for an attack. S is their shooting capability, and you can see they've got 0, so no shooting capabilities, they don't have any bows. D is their defense, and that's the number that the enemy needs to roll on their 10-sided dice to take off a hit point from the unit. So defense 11 is really good, especially if you're fighting people that have a low fight value. They're unlikely to be able to get that number. Okay. CD is combat dice, so how many dice does that model contribute? And you'll see that in combat, the maximum amount of dice you have is 5, which is often why units are 5 across. Okay. H is their hit points, so that's how many hits or wounds they can take before they die. So most of the warriors in this game just have 1 hit point. You see larger creatures like an ogre might have 3, and bigger creatures can have up to 10 hit points. PTS is how many points does that model cost? And then this unit has a special ability, shielding. And we'll see that in play in the game. But essentially it means that they can lower the amount of dice that they throw at the enemy, and the enemy will lower the amount of dice that they can throw at them. So kind of representing like a shield wall type situation. And lastly, base is the base which you're meant to put them on. So 25mm by 25mm. We find that as long as the base sizes are somewhat consistent, you can really put them on whatever base that you want. So let's briefly look at the two armies and see what they're composed of, and then we can get into the first turn. So these models, if you're familiar with Warhammer, are actually Dwarf Slayers. But in this game, I'm going to use them as the Dwarf Militia. So they've got really low defense, but they actually got quite good fighting capabilities because they've got these like double-handed pickaxes. These are going to be some dwarf warriors. So they're relatively sturdy. These models, some of you may know them as hammerers, but for Oathmark, these are going to be what we call line breakers that have really good fighting capabilities. They're really able to punch through those heavier defended opponents. And then these crossbowmen are going to be used as archers, which are your most common missile troops. And in the back here, we have a level 2 spellcaster, okay, like a runesmith. I should also mention that in the line breakers, there is a dwarf prince, and they have a really useful ability called command. So they can order extra units. So you see that in play in the game as well. Now facing them in the human kingdom, we have these 5 medium cavalry who are very strong, really good defense value, and they're being led by a human princess who's come with her patrol to take on the dwarves. We then have a unit of 10 rangers who are the kind of the very strong archer unit for the humans. We then have a slightly bigger unit of 15 human spearmen who have that shielding capability. 10 just regular human archers. And then we also have a level 2 human spellcaster. So that's the 2 forces that we're going to be playing with today. So let's go ahead and start the very first turn. Okay, so just before we start the first turn, we are going to choose the spells which the dwarf and human wizards will have. So because they're level 2, they get 2 spells, but they can only cast one of the spells in their turn. So for the dwarves, we're going to have the Gathering of Crows, which is really useful for if you're going to be shot at. And then they're also going to choose the Resolute as well. You'll see why the Resolute can be quite useful later on in the game, hopefully, when we see some combat. As for the human wizard, the damsel, she's going to choose Sunblind, because you can use that on the dwarven archers to stop them from shooting. And then she's also going to choose Blade Mastery. That can just increase the fighting capabilities of some of her units. Maybe the human spearman might be a good target, because they can be a little bit weak when it comes to their fighting capabilities. So that's the spells. So now let's roll for initiative. So this is the first turn, but just because the humans may go first doesn't mean they get to do everything with all their units. How you start a turn is you roll for initiative, and you'll see which side is going to start the turn. And that'll happen every single turn. So you never quite can plan on when you're going to be the person going first. How you roll for initiative is each player rolls 2d10. The person who rolls the highest number will be getting to go first. If both players roll the highest number, then you go to the number of the second dice. If you roll a double, there'll be a strange event, and if all the numbers come up the same, so you get 4 8s, there'll be some catastrophic event. So it could be 2 dragons fly down on the battlefield and start battling one another. So that adds an element of randomness to the game, which not everyone enjoys, but I think it's quite fun. It's just like the old days in Warhammer where your catapult would explode or your Skaven Warp Roll would burn half a unit of your own army. So let's roll for the humans first and see what they get. So 0, which is 10, and a 2. And the dwarves double 5. So straight away we see that we're going to have a random event come up. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so here's the strange event table, and you can see because the dwarves rolled a double 5 that there's actually an ancient Oathmark. So one of the units discover an ancient Oathmark on a fallen stone. The Oathmark was made to your current king's ancestors. Place an Oathmark on the table within 6 inches of one of your units, and all your students receive +1 to all morale tests while they're within 6 inches of this Oathmark. If an enemy unit moves into contact with the Oathmark is destroyed and removed from the table. So, this is maybe why the dwarves are so keen to defend this dwarven mountain pass, because of this Oathmark. I had to grab the closest thing at hand, which is this tiny little Buddha head statue, but it seems like the line breakers and the warriors are probably going to get a little morale bonus, and it gives them a good little bit of fluff for them being here and wanting to defend the mountain pass. The strange events are really, really fun, and what you'll find is in those expansion books, if you looked at the review, the expansion books will have further strange event tables based off what those expansions are about. So you might have one that's more fluffed around like an undead theme, or you might have one that's more fluffed around a winter theme or something like that, which is really, really cool. So though the dwarves got the double 5 in the strange event, the humans did roll the 10. So this means they're going to get the first activation. So all they need to do is choose which unit they think will be the best unit to activate first, activate it, but then they know that the dwarves will get to activate one of their units next. So the unit we're going to choose to activate first is going to actually be the human damsel. And the reason I want to do that is she is going to try to get her spell off to stop the dwarven unit from shooting. So in order for her to do that, she first needs to activate. What does that mean? So once again, you're going to roll 2d10, and you're hoping to get higher than what your activation is. So the human damsel has an activation of 5, so she's hoping to get over a 5 on one of these dice. If she doesn't, she'll still activate, but she can only do a simple action, so she won't be able to do a full activation. So let's see. So double 6, the doubles for activations don't mean anything in particular, but a 6 is more than enough to pass, so she's going to get to activate. So she gets to do 2 different actions. So she could choose to move, she could choose to do a spell, or she might do something where she will do a spell and then move. If she didn't activate, she could just do 1 thing, not 2, but she couldn't do a spell. So you can see not activating can be really frustrating because you cannot do as much. Her spells don't have a range, so she's going to try to cast that, I think it was called maybe Sunblind spell, onto the dwarf archers, and that way they won't be able to do a shooting activation on this turn. So let's go ahead and see how she goes with that. So looking at the Sunblind, so we can see that its casting value is 7. So that means I'm going to roll a certain amount of dice depending on the damsel's level. In her case, she's level 2, so she's going to roll 2 dice. She needs one of those dice to be a 7 or more for her to be able to get the spell off. If she does, it's going to be very useful because that unit won't be able to shoot in its next activation. So it won't be able to shoot this turn. Pretty much taking those archers out of use for the whole turn. So let's see how she goes. So 2 dice, looking for a 7 or more. 2 and a 10. So 2 doesn't matter. She got the 10. That means the spell goes off. Yay, that unit is going to be blinded by a dazzling light from the damsel. So now all we need to do is put some type of token next to the damsel, and that's just going to let me know that she's activated for this turn. I could move her, but she's relatively safe. Both those units are there protecting her, so I think she'll be fine where it is. So now we're ready to go on to the Dwarven players, and they'll get to activate one of their units. So the Dwarves are going to activate their spellcaster, and she'll activate on a 4. So a little bit higher than humans, and just activate on the 4. Level 2 wizard, so roll 2 dice, and she's going to do the Gathering of Crows, and she's going to do that on the warriors because they're most likely going to be the target of these rangers. Because in shooting, most of the time you'll need to target the closest unit. Okay, you can't just target anything that you want. So this is going to be cast on a 4+. So one of these dice will hopefully be more than a 4. 10 goes off. So they're going to get a little shielding. I'm just going to use a token just to represent that. And use my activation token there. And let's go straight on to the next human activation, which is going to be this arch unit here. So now we can have a little look at how shooting works. So with shooting, you have the front rank will shoot, which is those first 5 models. So that means you're going to get 5 combat dice, because they have 1 combat dice each. Then what you need to look at is the defense value of the warriors, which was 11. So it's going to be really hard to roll an 11 on a 10-sided dice. But normally you would roll them, and if any of them are 10s, you would roll them again. With these rangers, they've got a shoot factor of 2. So you minus 2 off 11. So now you're at 9. So now the chances have increased considerably. Only need to get a 9 on the dice. They actually get +1 shoot factor for every full rank behind the first. And they've got 1 extra full rank. So that means they're going to have a shoot factor of 3. So 3 off the defense value of 11 is going to be an 8. So they'll roll these dice, 5 of them. That's the maximum dice you can roll for an attack. And they're looking to get 8 or more. And that'll be enough to take out a warrior. That unit, though, of warriors, had a special ability. They've got shielding 2 against shoot attacks. So they're going to use that ability. And what that means is shielding 2 will take off 2 of these dice. So it's really, really useful. It's lowered the chance of them suffering casualties considerably. We're going to roll the dice, see if we get any which are over an 8. 1, not enough. 3, not enough. 9 is enough. So that's going to result in 1 casualty. So we take off 1. That casualty is pretty big because that takes off one of the full ranks, which will lessen their fighter capability. So that's 1 casualty. The Dwarven unit then needs to make a morale check. So morale is based off your activation roll. So it needs to roll 2 dice. It needs to get a 4 or more. But they're in luck because the prince is next to them. And the prince will add on an extra dice. Okay. So here we go. We have an 8 and a 10 as well. So that's more than enough to pass that. If they had failed that test, if it had showed up as all 1s, then that unit would become disordered. And if it was to fail a second morale check, it would then be taken out of the game. Okay, it would rout. So that is how shooting works in Oathmark. So we're up to the Dwarves activation. Before we continue though, just a couple of corrections. I'm probably going to be correcting myself a whole bunch for this video, so I apologise. But with the shooting of the rangers, I think I said that they would have to shoot at the closest target. The rangers have a special rule called aim fire. So that means they can actually shoot at any target they want. Unlike, say, the regular bowmen here and here, who do not have aim fire, so they do need to shoot at the closest target. Also, both the princes, so the princess for the humans and the prince for the dwarves have that command ability. So anyone within 6 inches of their unit will get to roll 3 dice, not just for morale, but also for their activation rolls. Okay, so that's really, really useful ability with your commanders. Your commanders in this game are not necessarily superhuman, taking on whole units or giant monsters. They're actually much better at controlling your army and doing that command side of things. So let's continue on. Thinking about that rule with the archers needing to shoot the closest unit, the dwarves are going to take the opportunity to try to get their line breakers up the field a little bit, so that if this unit of archers activates, they will need to shoot at the line breakers, who have quite a high defense, compared to this unit of archers, who are a little bit more vulnerable. So let's go ahead. They're going to try to activate the line breakers. Their activation is 4, and normally you roll 2 dice to activate them, but because you got the prince there, they'll roll 3 dice. 3 dice. Yep, there's a 5 and an 8, so both above a 4, so that unit will activate. Now what the prince can do is use their special command ability, and they have a command status of 1. So that means they can also choose to activate another unit at the same time. So this is how you can start to activate multiple units at once to sometimes gain an advantage. You could attack with 1 unit, and then if that unit gets pushed back, you'll then be able to attack again with another one. So the line breakers have activated successfully, and then we're also going to try to see if we can activate the warriors. So 3 dice because the prince. So 3 is not enough, but the 7 is fine. So both units are going to activate. They have a movement of 4, so it doesn't matter too much in the situation who goes first, but we'll do the warriors. Are going to go there 4 inches up. That's their first movement, and they're going to go for a second movement. And they are actually just going to wheel slightly. They could wheel as far as they want with that second piece, but they're just wheeling slightly just to protect themselves from that cavalry unit. And the line breakers are going to move directly forward. They're 4 inches. And they'll go forward an extra couple with that second one. The second movement, you can only go half your distance. So if you have a movement of 4, the second move will only be 2 inches. If you have a movement of, say, 8, like this cavalry unit, your second move action would only be 4 inches. So that is the dwarf line breakers and dwarf warriors completed. So both those units get their activation tokens, and now goes back to the human's turn to activate. All right, so the next human activation is going to be these archers to shoot at the line breakers. Now, before I mentioned if you needed to roll more than a 10 to hit your target, and you'd have to roll your 10-sided dice and get the 10, and then you need to re-roll it. When you re-roll it, to score a hit on the second roll, you need to get an 8, 9, or a 10. That's regardless of how high the target number is. So if it's 11, you need to roll a 10 followed by an 8 or more. If the target number was 18, then you still need to roll a 10 followed by an 8 or more. So that's how that works. In this case, the archers have a shoot factor of 2, and they get +1 shoot factor because they have a full rank. So they have 3 as their shoot factor. These are heavily armored dwarves. They don't have the shielding special rule to reduce the amount of combat dice, but they do have a defense of 11. So -3 off 11 gives you the number that we need to roll on the 10-sided dice, which is going to be an 8. There is 5 models in the front rank, so they're going to get the maximum amount of combat dice, which is not 4, which is 5. So we're looking for an 8, 9, or a 10 on these dice to inflict casualties on line breakers. And we get 1 casualty. So that's going to be removed. That's useful for the humans because it removes that full back rank. So it's going to reduce this unit's fighting factor. So now they need to make a morale test. They have an activation of 4. So they're going to have to get a 4 or more on one of these 3 dice. Normally it's 2 dice, but because of the prince, they get to roll an extra dice. And they just get it. If this 8 had been a 2 or a 3 or a 1, then the unit of line breakers would be disordered. And that would be very, very bad. It would leave them vulnerable for this unit of spearmen to charge in and potentially break that unit straight away. So that's the archers activated over there. And now let's move back to the dwarves. So the dwarves only have 2 units left to activate. They've got this unit of militia and the unit of archers. But the unit of archers can't make a shoot activation this turn because of the damsel's spell. The dwarves are going to try to activate the archer unit because we want to try to leave the militia to last just in case this cavalry try to make a move forward, and the militia will be there to counter them. So here we go for the archers. Because they're within 6 inches of the prince, they get 3 dice, looking for 4. They easily activate, and all they're going to do is move up in line with the line breakers. Just in case the spearmen do decide to come in to the line breakers and attack, the archers will be set up for the following turn to potentially attack them in the flank. So I'll move them up, put the activation token on them, and then we'll go back to the humans. So all the humans are going to do is try to activate these spearmen, and they're probably just going to hold their ground. So let's see if they activate first. So they need a 5 or more. No, so they don't activate. So they can only do 1 movement. So even if they wanted to, since it's a simple action, they're not allowed to move into combat. So they couldn't make that charge. You can see this could be a real pivotal moment where potentially if those line breakers had become disordered and the spearmen had a really good opportunity to go in and break them, but then all of a sudden because of this activation rule, they can't do that. So it adds a nice level of friction in the game where you're not entirely sure if your units are going to be obeying your orders exactly how you want. I personally really like that. Other people like to have total control. But as it is, the unit of spearmen are actually just going to stand their ground and let their archers hopefully weaken the dwarves up a bit more before they can come into the fight. Let's move straight into the dwarves. So they only have the militia unit left. It's going to activate on a 4 on 2 dice. They activate and they have a movement of 5. They're actually just going to move up in line so they're supported by the warriors. And now we can go to the last unit, which is the human cavalry. So the human cavalry are going to try to activate first, and that's going to determine what they do. So they need a 5 or more. Because it's the prince, they get 3 dice. Yes, easily activate. And what they're going to do is they are going to move straight ahead. Their movement is 8. So they can go 12 inches fully ahead to make the charge. I've already measured it. They are just within 12. So they're going to move all the way up. Pre-measuring is also allowed in this game. So you can measure everything out and know they're going to make the charge, but the unpredictability comes in those activation rolls. That's when you're unsure if you will make it or if you will just be stuck left in place. So now we're going to see a combat. Now, in Oathmark, combat happens at the same time. So there's, if you're used to Warhammer Fantasy Battles, you have that initiative where, the cavalry would charge in, most likely get to strike first, wipe out all the dwarven militia, or these slayers, and then the slayers don't get to fight back, and it might be a very sad time to be the dwarf player. In Oathmark, I enjoy it much more, because though this dwarven militia unit is probably going to have a very bad time, they still get an opportunity to fight back against the human cavalry. So let's look at the combat. So let's do the human cavalry first. So this is a medium cavalry unit. It has a fight factor of 3. It has a special rule called charge 3. And that means that on the charge, they get an extra 3 to their fight factor. Some units like spearmen will have a special rule called brace, and that will reduce the effectiveness of the charge factor. So now the human cavalry have a fight value of 6. The dwarf militia only have a defense of 9 because they're not wearing any armor. So they're going to be extremely vulnerable. That means that the human player only has to roll a 3 or more on their dice to inflict a casualty. If you roll a number that is 5 greater than your target number, so 3 plus 5 is 8. So if the human player rolls an 8, a 9, or a 10 on their dice, that's going to count as 2 casualties. So this is how you can start to have combats which actually can get quite bloody, where a single dice roll can mean multiple casualties. The other thing that the human player has is they have their leader. So they've got the princess in there, and she has what's called the champion dice. You may have noticed that one of the dice I'm using is red. So sometimes your units will be led by champions or kings or princes and princesses, and they will add in their champion dice, which is the special red dice. The special red dice inflicts 1 extra casualty. So if you roll enough to get 1 casualty, it will inflict 2. If you roll enough to inflict 2 casualties, it will inflict 3 casualties. So your heroes can add a bit of extra oomph to the combat, though maybe not as much as in some other fantasy games where a leader might go in and butcher an entire unit by themselves. So let's roll for the human cavalry. It's 5 dice, needing a 3 or more to have some type of effect. The red dice is the princess. So we roll the dice, and it is not necessarily the best roll. So 1 miss, that is 1 casualty, 2 casualty, 3 casualty, and an extra 1 because it's the princess dice. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is more than 5 over the target number, so that's 2 extra as well. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 casualties onto the dwarven militia. I'll just put a dice there, number 6, just to remind me. So it's most likely the cavalry have won this combat, but we still get to roll for the militia as well. The militia have heavy pickaxes as their weapons, so their fight value is actually very good at 3. Plus they have 1 full rank. It happens at the same time, so we don't remove the casualties yet. So they get the full rank, so it's going to make them at fight value 4. Now this is the human cavalry, not the heavy cavalry. So they have a defense value of 12. So 12 minus 4 is 8. So the dwarven player is going to need to roll an 8, a 9, or a 10 to take out one of these cavalry models. Every cavalry model, though, is going to be a real big loss to the human player. So we roll the dice, and we have 1, 2 casualties. So 2 the cavalry models are removed. I'll remove those 6 slayers in just a minute. But both sides suffer casualties, so then we're going to make a morale check for each one. So let's go and do that. Okay, so looking at the morale, how we do that is we look at the unit's activation. I think I said the militia were activation 4, like most dwarves, but the militia actually have 1 less. They're actually activation 5, so it's my mistake. But you then will minus the amount of casualties to that, or add the amount of casualties, sorry. So 5 plus 6 casualties means that's going to be an 11. So they're going to do a morale check where they roll 2 dice and they have to get more than 11. That's obviously going to be impossible on a 10-sided dice. But if any of the 2 dice, or if either of the 2 dice is a 10, that's an auto success. All right, so the dwarf militias need to get one of these dice of a 0, or 10. No, nowhere near. So this unit is going to become disordered. If they fail another morale check, then they're going to be broken and they'll be out of the game. The human player also needs to make a morale check. Even though they won the combat, they might also still end up being disordered. So they have an activation of 5 minus 2 for the casualties. So they need to get a 7, but they're going to get 3 dice because of the princess. So one of these dice has to be a 7 or more. No, they don't get it. That is a pretty big deal. So they become disordered as well. Then the losing side is going to be either push back 1 inch or push back 6 inches. And it's up to the human player because they won the combat. The human player could also decide that instead they're just going to move back 1 inch. So instead, they're simply going to move the dwarven player back 1 inch, and then they're going to leave it at that. That's going to activate this unit here, and the militia unit was already activated, sorry. All units have now been activated. That is the end of the first turn, and then we move on to the second turn where we roll for initiative again. Now, for this turn, it'll be really important to see who gets the initiative, and they're going to have some interesting choices to make. So let's talk about that next. So we're on to turn 2 now. Most games of Oathmark last between 6 to 8 turns. The smaller size battles will normally not last as many turns. They tend to be a little bit more bloody. And I have just rolled for the initiative for the humans and the dwarves. And I ended up rolling, the humans rolled a 9 and a 2. And the dwarf player actually rolled a 9 and a 2 as well. I had to quickly look up what to do in the case of this roll. And you just simply roll again. So here we go. Human player, 4 and a 3. It's looking good for the dwarves. 7 and 4. So because the dwarves got the 7, they're going to get the first activation. And this is really interesting because they've got a few interesting options. This unit is in danger of being broken. That unit of archers, the human rangers, they could shoot this unit and force them to take another morale check. And then if they fail it, they're going to break. So I could take the opportunity to try to activate them. And if successful, they become undisordered. They can't do anything else. They can just do a simple thing like a maneuver. They can't go into combat. That would save the militia unit. But because this human cavalry unit with the princess is disordered, this is probably the best opportunity the dwarf player is going to have to eliminate this super powerful unit. And if they can do that, then they're going to have a very good chance in this game. So I think they're going to take that opportunity. They're actually going to activate the... Yeah, they're going to activate the dwarven line breakers with the prince on 3 dice, and then they're going to try to activate the warriors, and we'll get this flank charge in. So let's see if the prince activates on a 4. Yes, they do. And they're going to activate the warriors next to them. They activate as well. So first off, let's move those line breakers. They're simply going to move up 6 inches straight ahead. So I'm just being very rough here because I'm one-handed, but they're going to move up. So they're just in front of these spearmen. They could potentially be flank charged by the archers, but they're not too worried about that. They're pretty resilient, and they know there's no human prince over here to activate multiple units at once or anything like that. This unit here, you can only charge straight ahead, so they first need to do a maneuver. where they shall wheel as far as they want, up to here. And now they're going to do their second one, where they'll move their 2 inches into the flank of this unit. So let's figure out this combat. Okay, so this is a slightly more trickier combat than before. There's a few different things going on. We have the warriors in the flank of the cavalry, and the cavalry are disordered. So looking up the rules, quickly just to get my head around it, the dwarf warrior unit, because they're in the flank, are going to get essentially +1 to their fight. So they have fight 2, so that's going to become fight 3. The human cavalry have the defensive 12. So the dwarves still need to get a 9 or a 10 to actually do anything. So it's going to be a little bit tricky for them. The cavalry do have the shielding rule, but you can't use that when you're being attacked on the flank. That's only if you're being attacked from the front. So the dwarves will get the full 5 dice. When the cavalry will attack back, they're going to just attack back with just 2 dice. And that's because cavalry have combat dice 2. And when you're on the flank, you only get the amount of combat dice as you have with the rank there. So let's do the dwarf warriors first. So looking for a 9 or more. Yes, so they got 1. So it's going to remove 1 of the cavalry models. Now the cavalry will strike back. They only get 2. And now they're not charging. Their fight factor is 3. But it's going to be -1 because they're being attacked on the flank. So they're going to get a fight value of 2. The dwarf warriors have armor 11. So they're also going to need a 9. But they're only going to get 2 dice. So a 9 or a 10. And they also get 1. So neither side wins the combat. So they both just will move back an inch, I believe. One of the big things is because the cavalry unit was in a combat, it now becomes activated. So the human player can't activate this unit to make it to rally itself. Okay? They get an activation token. Now we need to do morale checks. So let's do the dwarf warriors first. And are they within 6? Okay, we'll be generous and say it's within 6 of that prince. So you're going to get 3 dice. They lost a casualty, so that's going to be -1. So they needed, the activation's 4, they needed a 5, 2 9s, super easy. The human player, their activation is 5, they lost 1, so that means they're going to need a 6 or more. They're already disordered, that adds an extra +1 to the roll, so they're going to need a 7 or more on one of these dice, and if they fail it, they're going to break, and the whole unit just is gone. 1, 6, 10. Okay, so luckily they got the 10, so they just remain disordered. And that's that combat there. So that's really meant that they've managed to keep this human cavalry on the back foot by keeping them disordered. Right, so the humans will try to activate the damsel next. So she's going to activate on a 5+. Yes. And she is going to cast Blade Mastery, which is her other spell, on the Dwarven Spearmen to give them +1 fight. So if those line breakers decide to charge in. No, sorry, for when the Spearmen charge into the line breakers. The line breakers are already moved. So she's a level 2 wizard, so she rolled 2 dice. To cast this, she needs an 8 or more. So she's going to have to get a little bit lucky. No, so she fails to cast. That's an annoyance, but this just is how the dice roll. So the dwarves are next. They're going to try to activate their unit of archers. So they're going to activate on 4 or more. They get 3 dice because they're within 6 of the prince. Yes, they get a 9. So you can see, once you get the hang of it, it is really fast moving, and it goes to and fro from either player really smoothly. So the unit's going to activate. There is 5 in the front rank. So you're going to get 5 combat dice. They need to shoot the closest unit, which is that other unit of archers. It would be better if they could shoot the spearmen just to reduce their fighting capability. But that's okay. Here we go. So the archers have a defense of 9. And the dwarven archers have a shoot factor of 2. Plus they have a full rank. So that's 3. So 9 minus 3 is 6. So they're going to need a 6 or more on these dice to do anything. And we have 1, 2. So 2 casualties from the human archer unit. So the human archer unit now needs to pass morale. They have an activation of 5. And they suffered 2 casualties. So that's a 7, which I need on 2 dice. But because it's a shooting attack, you minus 1 off it. Okay, because shooting is not as effective at breaking units up as close combat. So on the 2 dice, one of them needs to be a 6 or more, or else they're going to become disordered. They fail. So you see that lower activate, the higher activation roll of the humans make it a little bit more tricky. They become a little bit more disordered, a little bit more rapidly. So now go to the human player, and they have a few different options. They could activate this unit of rangers, the archers, or the spearmen. So they're going to try to activate the archers who are disordered. See if we can rally them. So activation 5, but it is +1 because of the disordered. So they need a 6 or more to activate. And they fail. So they can only do a simple action. A simple action does include shooting, but they'll have 1 less shoot factor. So they're going to shoot at those line breakers. Now the human archers have a shoot factor of 2, +1 for the full rank is 3, -1 for disordered goes back to 2. And they're going to shoot at line breakers who have defense 11, -2 is 9. So they're going to need a 9 or a 10 on one of these 5 dice to do anything. Whew. 1, 2, 3 line breakers. That is massive. Good job, human archers. So now the line breakers do their morale check. So 1, 2, 3. So the activation is 4. And then minus or add 3 to it for the casualties is a 7. But then it's shooting. So then it's going to go back down to a 6. So they need a 6 or more on one of the dice. Normally it's 2 dice, but because of the prints, it's 3. So 6 or more? No. So now they're disordered. This is bad news for the dwarves. It was looking quite good for them for a second. But such is the way of battle that it can flow and ebb extremely quickly. So that's those disordered archers are now done. Oops. So who do we have left for the dwarves? All right, we'll do the dwarven wizard next. We'll see what he can do. So I'm going to try to activate the dwarven wizard. I've actually had total mind blank as to the second spell he had. He had the Gathering of Crows for shielding 2 against a shooting attack. It's got a very low casting value. And I think the other one was Stoneheart maybe for +1 defense. So they're going to try to cast Stoneheart. It is on an 8 or more. Just to increase the defense value of those line breakers. Just in case they get shot at again. Just a bit nervous they're going to break. So first the wizard has to activate on a 4. Yes, good. Then she's going to cast her spell. It is cast on an 8. Yes, 9. So +1 defense for these Dwarven line breakers. They're activated. So now the humans are going to try to activate their spearmen. So spearmen activate on a 5. Yes, they do activate. And they're going to take the opportunity to charge in against these line breakers. So, combat. The line breakers don't have shielding, so they can't use that. The human spearmen have fight value of 2, plus they've got 2 full ranks. So that makes them fight value 4, which is very, very good. The line breakers, though, normally have defense 11, but plus 1 because of the wizard spell. So that's defense 12. So the human spearmen are going to need 8 or more on their 5 dice. None. Oh, that's terrible. Okay, this is going to hurt the spearmen. Now, the line breakers, they've got a fight value of 3. So they've got quite a good fight value there. But it's -1 because they're disordered. So it's only fight value 2. The spearmen, though, are light troops. So they are very lightly defended. They only have a defense value of 9. So the dwarven line breakers only need to get a 7 or more to do some damage. And because they've got the prince in there, they get that special champion dice. They're going to get all 5 dice. So 7 or more, hoping to get more than a 7 on the champion dice. Yes, so they got 1, 2 from the champion dice. 3, 4 of the spearmen. So I'll remove those spearmen shortly. Now the dwarven player won, so they're going to push those spearmen back just an inch, just to keep them close by for perhaps another charge. The spearmen need to make a morale check. Now, they lost 4. The activation is 5. So they're going to have to get a 9 or more. Because they still have a full rank of troops behind that front rank, they're going to get +1 to the roll. So it is 5 to a 9 for the casualties, -1 for the full rank. So they're going to need an 8 or more on one of these dice, which they get with the 10. So they're actually not disordered. So they're still in a really strong position to activate in the next turn and potentially take those dwarven line breakers out. So the only move that the dwarf player has left is the militia. So they have an activation of 5, but they're disordered. So they're going to need a 6 on 2 dice. And if they can pass it, they'll be able to remove that disorder marker. Yes, they do get it. So they become ordered again. And that's going to be really good because in the next turn, if the dwarf player gets to go first, they could potentially activate those militia and charge in against this cavalry unit. So now, let's try to activate these rangers here. So, range activating on 5 or more. Yes, the 6. They're going to shoot 5 dice at those line breakers. So the line breakers have defense 12. Archers have a shoot factor of 2, +1 for the rank. Whoop. +1 for the rank is 3. So they're going to need 9 or more. Let's see if they can get 1. Yes, so they get 1. That's going to force a morale check. That's going to be a 4 or more. So probably going to pass. And they're fine. But now, every casualty is going to really affect this unit because they're going to start losing combat dice. That is the last activation for this turn. So now we're going to move on to turn 3. I'll remove those human spearmen in a second and all the activation markers, and we're off for initiative again. So top of turn 3, we can see the human princess is in danger, surrounded by the militia and warriors. The rangers over here are in a great position to take out the line breakers or possibly try to charge in and save the princess. The spearmen are also in a great position to charge in and take out the line breakers there. This unit of archers is disordered, but they did a great job against the line breakers last time. And we have the dwarven archers and damsel over yonder. I'll remove that token. And the human damsel over here. So this is probably going to be the make or break turn of the game. And hopefully you're seeing that the activation system really makes this game interesting and puts up some good challenges for both players and adds for really a smooth flowing game where you'll constantly have to remake your plans, and there's that nice little added friction with the activation rolls where you don't 100% know if your unit is actually going to do what you want it to do. So let's roll for initiative. So human player, oh no, 1 and a 2. The dwarf player, a 3 and a 2. So even with a 3, they still managed to beat the human player. So what is the best move? Is it charge the warriors into the flank, or try to rally the line breakers? It's probably a bit too generous to say they're within 6 now. What to do? I think the dwarf player needs to try to activate the warriors and get rid of the prince. So it's 2 dice. They need a 4 or more. The princess, sorry. Yes, they activate. So they're going to charge in. That means activation token for the princess, activation for the warriors. Warriors get 5 dice. No shielding can happen for the human cavalry. They've got a defense value of 12. We've got fight factor 2 over here, or +1 because of the rear. So they're looking for a 9 or a 10. Good luck. 1. Okay, that's good. They're running low now. So it's just the princess. So let's just take her off onto a single base. So she'll fight back. I'm a little bit unsure if being attacked on the flank, if they get to roll the champion dice, like the red dice, one of the dice. I'm going to do it anyway because I think at this point it's cool having the princess battling alone, or maybe it's the princess and her bodyguard standing firm against the warriors and the militia surrounding them. So 2 dice. Their fight factor is 3. -1. I think last time I said it was -1 because they're doing a flank attack. It's actually -1, not for the flank, but it's -1 because she's disordered. So down to fight factor 2. The warriors have defense 11, so she needs a 9 or a 10. Hoping to get a 9 or a 10 on that red dice. No, nothing. All right, so she is going to have to make a morale check. So activation 5, -1 for the casualty. That's going to be activation 6. She's disordered. It's going to add an extra 1 to it, so it's going to be a 7. So you need to roll 7 or more on one of these 3 dice to pass. No! She breaks and runs. A coward. She is out of here. That is a big blow for the human player losing their leader. And you'll have some what they call cascading panic now. So when a unit breaks, any unit within 8 of that unit, probably just misses out on anyone. But if they were within 8, they would then need to make a morale check and they could potentially become disordered. Say this unit of Rangers was already disordered and they failed, they would break and that would cause further panic down the line. So units can really rapidly start to fall apart, okay, once you reach that breaking point. The only thing I'm unsure of at the moment is, can this unit of warriors reform? So I'll have a look and then I'll move on to the human player. Alright, so no, it doesn't look like this unit can reform to face the Rangers. They just have to stay where they are. So, human player next. They've got a few choices to make. I think they need to try to take out this line breaker unit while they've got the chance. So those spearmen are going to try to activate on a 5. Yes, they do. They're going to move forward into combat. So they're going to get 5 dice. They've got a fight factor of 2. Plus 1 for the rank behind is 3. The Dwarven player still has the that shielding spell up from the Dwarven wizard. So they're going to need a 9 or a 10 on their 5 dice to do anything. Hoping to inflict a casualty just to force that morale check. No, nothing. Human player, it's all falling apart for him. Unfortunately for the spearmen, that means those line breakers are going to get 5 full dice. As you would expect, the elite Dwarven infantry doing their work against the spearmen unit. So they're going to get a fight factor of 3. Minus 1 because they're disordered. So that's 2. This human spearmen have defense 9, so it's going to be a 7. But they've also got that special champion dice for the prince. 7. 1, 2 casualties. That's no good because that takes out that back rank. So they no longer have a full rank for the second rank. That's going to make it a little bit harder for them to pass a morale check. So the morale check is on 2 dice. Normally they'll need a 5 or more, but they've suffered 2 casualties. So that's going to be a 7, which they're going to need. No, alright, they become disordered. And the Dwarven player gets to choose to move them back 1 inch or 6. And it's just going to move them back 1. Both those units are now activated. So you can see when the combat starts to happen, the activation process goes even faster than normal. Because of the combat, other units start to get activated. So that's human player, so Dwarven player. They're going to activate their archers on a 4 or more. Yes. And they are going to shoot at the human archers. Just to see if they can force that morale check. Those spearmen are actually probably closer. I'll have a little measure and then roll the dice. Yep, so those spearmen are closer. So the archers are going to shoot at the spearmen. The archers have a shoot factor of 2, plus 1 for the full rank is 3, against the defense value of 9. So they actually only need 6 or more to do anything. The spearmen do have shielding, and I believe they can use that capability now. So that means that instead of 5 dice, the archers will just roll 4 dice. So 4 dice and needing 6 or more. 2. So that's 2 of the spearmen gone. So now for morale, we're looking at 5 normally, but they suffered 2 casualties, so that's going to be a 7, but it's shooting, so you minus 1 of it to 6, but they're disordered, so back up to a 7. So they need one of these 2 dice to be a 7 or else they're going to break. This could be nearly it for the human player. They hold just lucky. Because you can see, if this unit broke, then potentially this unit of archers would have to do a morale check and potentially break. Then the damsel would need to do a morale check and the rangers as well. So that's that archer unit activated. Now we're going to try to activate the rangers, the human rangers on a 5. Yes. They're going to shoot at these line breakers, just to try to force that morale check. So, shoot factor of 3 against defense 12, so they need 9s. And 1. Okay, that makes them slightly less combat effective against the spearmen. Plus it forces a morale check. They'd have to get super lucky unlucky to fail this, because they just need a 4. It was close. Okay, so they pass. And those rangers are activated. The dwarven player will activate their wizard. No! Oh, that's frustrating. Okay, so the wizard can't really do much. Just going to stand there. Even that Oathmark, I think, adds +1 to the roll, but that's not enough anyway. The wizard was going to cast shielding on the unit of archers to protect them from this unit of human archers. That's not going to work. So now those human archers are going to try to activate. See if they can get rid of that disorder marker. So they need a 6 or more. Yes. So the disorder marker is going to go away. And then they're going to shoot at the closest unit, which is the line breakers. So 5 dice. Shoot factor of 2. +1 for the rank is 3 against defense 12. So 9s or more. 1, 2. They're running out of line breakers. There's just the prince and the standard bearer left. So morale check. Activation of 4, but they suffer 2 casualties. But then it's only shooting. So a 5 or more. They hold on. Holding on. The dwarven player just has the militia left. So militia activate on a 5. Yep, easy peasy. They are going to move up. They're 7.5 inches. Yep. So it's normally 5 for the first move and then 2.5 for the second. So they're just going to move up and be in a space to maybe engage the rangers on the next, because they can wheel and then move forward 5. They should be able to do that, I reckon. That just leaves the human wizard. So the human wizard is going to try to activate. 7 is more than enough. And they're going to try to add 1 to the fight factor of the spearmen. And to cast it on 8+. Yes! Okay, so spearmen have +1 to their fight value, which might be enough just to tip the scale in their favour. And that's the end of turn 3. So we're going right on to turn 4. And that'll probably be the last turn of the game. So turn 4, both these units are actually disordered, so they're probably not going to be able to fight a combat. So the +1 fight value for the spearmen is not that much use. But let's see how we go. So human player rolls for initiative. 5 and 8 is good. The dwarven player, 1 and 5. So human player gets to activate first. And their best move is to, I think, activate these rangers. Which they do. That's on 5 or more. And the rangers are going to shoot those line breakers. and see if they can just wipe them off the field. So shoot 3 to defense 12. So they're going to need 9 or 10. Hoping to get 3 hits. 1 for the standard bearer to go down, and then that prince has, I think, 2 wounds. So here we go. None. So that activates that unit. No casualties. They can still move. So they get 2 actions. So you can shoot and then you can move. Okay, and they can move back 3 inches. I'm just going to do a rough 3-inch move. That might save them from these dwarven militia. So let's go the dwarven archers. We'll go next. Activating on a 4. Yep. And they are going to shoot the spearmen, who are the closest target. And the spearmen will use shielding. So it's just 4 dice. Shoot factor 2. Plus an extra 1 for the full rank is shoot factor 3 against defense 9. So they just need 6s to do some casualties. Oh, 1, 2, 3 casualties. That is no good. All right. So they are activation 5. This is for the morale check. They need to pass the morale check or they're going to break. So activation 5. Then you add 3 because of the casualties. So that's 8. You then add an extra 1 because they're disordered. So that's 9. But it's a shooting attack. So you minus 1 off it to 8. So then you roll 8 or more on one of these 2 dice. No! So they break. So that unit is out of the game. Every unit within 8, which is the rest of the human army, now needs to do a morale check. So this could be disastrous for them. So let's do the rangers. Need a 5 or more. Yes. The damsel will need a 5 or more. Yes. And lastly, that last unit of archers in the back, they need a 5 or more. Yes. Okay, so they all passed the cascading panic. That is pretty bad still for them. So last chance will be the human archers trying to activate. Yes, it's the 7. They're going to shoot the line breakers, who are the closest target. And it's shoot factor 2. Plus 1 for the rank is 3. Against defense 12. So they're going to need 9s. Can they get them? Just 1. So it's just the prince by himself. Will he stand firm? He's going to need a 4 on one of these 3 dice. Will he break? No, he stands. Of course he does. He's a dwarf. So that's those archers done. Okay, let's activate the prince just to rally him. Yes, he gets rid of his disordered. He's got shielding there. So really, at this point in the game, you could keep playing out with the archers, shooting at the dwarves, but you know the dwarves are in a very solid position. They've taken out the human princess. They've still got their unit of warriors. They've still got their prince intact. So for me personally, I would probably call the game here and call it a minor dwarven victory. They have taken considerable casualties losing most of their line breakers and a lot of their militia. But really, they've taken out the human cavalry. They've taken out their main unit of spearmen. But hopefully you got a really good idea of how the game flows, how the activation system works, rough idea of how combat and shooting works, as well as the idea of how magic works. And we also got to see a strange event occur and using the initiative system. Let me know if that was of use to you. Please leave some comments or likes or share the videos. I think Oathmark is a fantastic game, and I'm hoping to be making some more content. I should have some videos out soon of the expansions, and we'll also look a bit at the army building and the kingdom building, which are other really interesting elements of Oathmark. And then possibly in the future, I can have some of my friends over and we can film a couple of bigger games. So thanks for listening. Please leave some comments about what you liked or any constructive feedback. And keep on gaming on.